And that's the beauty of cacao, is she can connect us to those emotions in a very subtle way. She doesn't reactivate any trauma, so it's safe. And you can go wherever you want to go. So she just opens doors, but she doesn't push you through them.
But yeah, let's dive in. Let's go for it. Let's dive into all things cacao. So, what your name first of all, Cacao Zeba? How did that come about?
Got my cacao right
You
here.
have, I have not.
Oh,
So,
you know what? I thought this morning when I was preparing my cup, I was like, oh, I should have sent Chris some cacao. Like, of course, didn't even. Yeah. Anyway, you'll drink with me. It comes all the way to you now.
oh yeah, I'm drinking it. It's turning my water
Yeah,
into murky brown.
chickawee.
There you go. So yeah, I
Mm.
have not got a cacao, but you know what? I'm gonna host this experience so you can talk me through what you're going through. Maybe do a little, a little insight into the cup as we go along and how what you're feeling perhaps. um
Yeah.
but yeah, cacao then. Let's talk all things cacao. I think I want to tap into your story, how it came to be such a business now, but like it, big part of your life and lifestyle, and yeah, how that came to be. So briefly, kind of how it came into your life, or how you came into its life, I guess. And then yeah, we're gonna, I think, go into the benefits, dispel some myths around chocolate, and really, like, cacao for dummies type thing, even just for myself, because I'm not exactly a connoisseur. But yeah, and then we'll go into some benefits, and then maybe a bit of the history of cacao, and we can just see how it goes. Yeah.
Wonderful. I have before I start talking, and probably won't start because I love talking about cacao. I want to ask you one question. How did you come to cacao, and why did you want to record a session?
Aha. I believe, well, oh, maybe there are two different questions, two different answers, I think. So the first one, how did I hear about it? It was it was a probably a staple in lots of places that I was curious about. So it was always present. I would hear about it. It kind of went along with certain practices and certain, I guess, cultures that I was interested in. So more spiritual, more dance, more ecstatic dance type scenarios, and cacao would be brought in. I'd say I really took it with the most intention in India when I was there in 2019 in January. I went back. I mean, I traveled there when I was 4 years old, but I went back with my partner to do my yoga teacher training, and that was really when there was a space set up really for um, working with it in such a sacred way. So that was probably the first time I really it really kind of took me on a bit of a journey. But before that, I feel like it's been around in kind of my awareness for like 5-10 years maybe. But more so when I've just been tapping into health and lifestyle and cacao, and differentiating what that means over just chocolate. So I've always been curious about it, and it's a worldwide traded commodity, just much like coffee, and I'm just curious about things like that. So yeah.
Wonderful. Wow. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. It's everywhere. Actually, my friend who makes these beautiful bourbon cups, I think they're really fitting for cacao, because a lot of people think that cacao has this feminine spirit,
Uh-huh.
which, it's not a rule, but a lot of people experience that, like heart opening and surrender and receiving. And yeah, so, and she actually discovered cacao in India too, and that was a big part of her learning. But for me, actually, it all started in Iceland. So I'm originally from Germany, hence the name Cacao Zauber, which means cacao enchantment or cacao sorcery, if you want. But I studied in Iceland and lived there for a few years. And funny enough, this is the country where cacao has been booming for years and years. And I discovered in 2017 through friends. Just it was always already kind of a big deal there. So people would just drink it at home and would invite you over for cacao instead of a coffee. And that's how I discovered it. And so I asked them about it, what it was, and they told me about cacao ceremonies. I never made it to one. Um, I was curious, but it was also just not my idea of spending my time. I studied visual arts and literature and language, and very interested in cultures and mythologies. That's part of my arts as well. But sitting in circle and sharing circle, not sure. I was into yoga and but not into spiritual practice in that sense. So it wasn't really my cup of tea. But then, yeah, I would just drink it with friends and researched into it and discover it was very good for your liver detox and kidney detox and just for your body in general. So I started implementing it into my daily life. And a few months down the line, I noticed that I didn't crave sugar anymore. And I'm a big chocolate girl. Usually I was like, just eat chocolate after every meal basically. And suddenly that stopped because I was very strict with myself and would drink the pure cacao, only pure, so without any sweetness. And then I realized, okay, that's a good thing, but still I feel like not honoring it properly, I guess. Thinking that it's quite expensive, and then a lot of people say that it has such a magical effect on them. So I wanted to start rituals, and actually discovered or found an artist, and she's also a witch, so a proper practicing witch, and I found that so fascinating. For me, that was a new world. It was like, wow, I was always interested in, like I said, mythology, spiritual cultures, but especially the yoga culture didn't resonate with me. So that it was too far away from me. Like India, Eastern, completely different worlds, and that rich world opened something new up to me, and I realized, oh my gosh, yes, I thought that was only fairy tales for kids. And then I dived into that a bit and realized all my interests for the Babylonian mysteries. I studied King Arthur and their legends and the whole Celtic part, and just realized you can use that as a spiritual practice. And that then brought me into honoring the elements, especially in Iceland, because they are very strong, right? You can't really escape the snowstorms or the earthquakes and the volcanoes erupting. So I started doing that and implementing cacao in my kind of elemental sort of rituals, and then starting to notice something while I was painting. I'm not a night owl, so I usually go to bed quite early. And that evening, I just looked at some point after painting, looked at the clock, and saw it was 3 a.m. And then I realized, okay, I was proper zoomed out. That never happened before. That must have been the cacao. And so I continued. And then after a few months later, I actually experienced that heart opening effect. And for me, the main thing was trust that came and still is. I think it's one of the biggest teachings I get to receive through cacao again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back to that moment where you look at your watch and it's 3 a.m.
Yeah.
after taking the first cup.
Well, no, I had the cup. I must have had it at like 7 in the evening or something, right?
Okay.
Like a kind of late night cup, and I decided to just dedicate the time to drink some cacao and paint. Um, and so I would just go into this flow state of
Mm.
painting, and I really liked it. It was just drawing and some watercolors, nothing big, but I just was so zoomed in. And at some point, yeah, when I looked at the watch, it was 3 a.m. and thought, oh my gosh, I've never been up that late without any disturbance, didn't distract myself, was completely in that creativity and in that joy of it. And really loved what I was doing too. Everything looked so much more beautiful. Like everything was just lovely and beautiful. So I had this immediate thought of, oh my gosh, what if this is like a drug? And I wake up the next morning, look at the painting, it's shit. So,
Yeah.
but that
And you
didn't happen.
feel that as well, and you feel shit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm very hesitant with all sorts of substances. So I also naturally that comes with judgment, right? So that was my
Mm.
judgment of like, oh yeah, probably it's just gonna make me believe that I paint something nice, but I still have that little watercolor painting hanging over there. So
Amazing. Yeah, you woke up, it was still as beautiful. Lovely. So yeah, and then so did you dive into research about cacao and all the benefits and why it was, why it's been almost taken and extracted and brought to the world in such a different way than its pure form, much like a lot of things.
Yeah, so like I said, that happened before I even noticed energetic effects or even physical effects of the cacao. I just heard of it, like people would take it, like, oh, it's amazing, feel so much
Mm-hmm.
love. And I was like, I don't feel anything. So I literally just researched it for the benefits of drinking it because, yeah, I mean, as a chocolate person, I love chocolate. Thought, what is the background of this pure plant? Right? And I got really interested in that and what it can bring to us. And obviously, there's a lot of research already done with chocolate. We all know chocolate makes you happy, and actually, a piece of dark chocolate is good for your heart. All these kind of things have been around for chocolate. But yeah, now when you think of the completely pure plant, which is hardly processed, um, it has so much more benefits. And
Mm-hmm.
in chocolate, because it is processed and often the cacao butter is taken away, it's stripped of most of its nutrients. Um, and yeah, I was particularly interested in that liver detox, and that I found that really particularly interesting. But then found more things such as why it's good for the heart, or why you get really calm while focused, why you can stay in that flow state. So it kept me awake, right? But it was not like caffeine kind of hit where you're just jittery and you awake all night and you really want to sleep but you can't. It was more of this surrender, of this beautiful, calm yet not activate mind, more like an alert
Mm-hmm.
mind, and that's the theobromine amongst others. So theobromine is like similar in the molecular structure to caffeine, but it stimulates the cardiovascular system, which is good for the heart, versus the nervous system. So what caffeine does. And we live in this very nervous system agitated world, don't we? Like we all have a lot of stress. We feel stressed a lot. We even have, us people struggle with adrenal fatigue, and the nervous system is kept constantly high. And what we do if we get tired, we drink more coffee. We like agitate that nervous system more and more. And
Mm-hmm.
so with cacao, we can stay in focus and in concentration while actually calming our nervous system. And magnesium is in cacao too, if we want to talk about more of the benefits, which calms the body and relaxes the muscles, but also is good for the brain. Iron, great for women, helps on your period.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's there's the most amount of iron in a plant based um nutrient for cacao. So obviously meat has the most iron rich, but yeah, for a plant, cacao's got the most amount of iron. But
did you just
let's
look that up?
say again.
Did you just look that up?
Not this second, but within my research, I was like, wow, yeah, cacao's that's phenomenal, along with lots of other stuff. It's fascinating. But can we just define for those that don't actually know the difference between cacao, the
Oh yeah,
other, which is cocoa or
cocoa.
cocoa, as it would be called. I thought that was the American saying, but it's not. They're
Me
two
too.
different things.
I totally get it. Yes, and that's an issue with marketing and all that,
Mhm.
and how they implement, like in the food industry, how they implement certain um uh, what is it, certain branding strategies
Mm.
or terms, such as also raw cacao is a very common one, which actually more refers to pure, because technically cacao is really rarely raw, because just of the natural fermentation process.
Okay.
There's so many, we could dive into that, but just talking about terms, so they just become popular and then become really strong, and we think this is the real deal. But yeah, so let's dive into that difference. So cacao refers to the Theobroma cacao tree, right?
Mm.
And that it's a tree with like beautiful pods. They kind of look like this,
Yeah.
right?
Would you
um
compare it to a coffee bean or seed?
it's really big.
Uh-huh.
You know
And
what, I
it's
can
and
show
it's
you one.
and it's like a purple color.
So this is a dried cacao pod, just as a reference, right?
Okay, yeah. So as big as a mango, and
Yeah, and it can be even bigger. So this is
uh-huh.
quite a small one because it's dried. And inside, this is all dried now. Inside you've got the pulp and the fruit, which is and the beans and the seeds. Those cacao seeds, they're inside here. They
Yeah.
are used for producing cacao and then also chocolate further down the line and cocoa. So, but cacao so is referring to the whole fruit, to the bean that's being processed and then used in used in all sorts of products.
Hmm.
Cocoa is a further step away from it. So this is the defatted cacao bean because the beans in cacao, and also they can have different colors. They can be purple, brown, red, green, yellow. It's quite fascinating to see a
Wow.
tree because it has like all sorts of rainbow colors on it. Um, but yeah, so those beans naturally contain around 40-50% cacao butter, which is amazingly healthy and helps the body metabolize the nutrients, has a lot of nutrients itself. But that in the chocolate history, they invented cacao powder for easier use, right? Just use milk in it and then stir it. And so they defatted the bean. They detracted the oil or the cacao butter in it. And that's cocoa powder, which is very much heated. So very much processed because, yeah, it's been defatted and highly heated. So it's easily melting into milk or water, whatever you use. So cocoa powder is hardly cacao anymore. It hardly has any nutrients, and that's the problem that we got so used to that word, or in the US particularly, that they think they are eating something healthy, but they're actually just eating like what a percentage, tiniest percentage of the actual plant.
Hmm. Yeah, when you see a headline on the news saying red wine and chocolate is actually good for you, and you're like, okay, but yeah, what is that study actually actually
That's right.
studying? What's being studied there, and what's actually being eaten? Two different things. So, how much of cacao would be in like a standard chocolate bar?
That's a really good question. I haven't asked myself this, but let
I'd
me see. I've got
I'm gonna hazard a guess and say about a couple of percent, no more than
so
10.
just as a
You've
reference,
got a
right?
dairy milk bar right there.
No, not a German. So I've got my cacao block, right, which is literally just
So
solid
that would be
cacao.
raw cacao.
That is pure cacao. Like I said, I wouldn't refer to it as raw because
Okay.
technically we're going
Because
into a
you
marketing
do
thing.
get a lot of brands that say raw cacao,
Yeah,
ceremonial grade.
I'd be. There's so many differences. It's not protected terms. That's the thing. So you
Sure,
might want to do your.
ceremonial grade is definitely not. You could be having a terrible ceremony, like, oh, a good one. No one knows.
The problem also is just because someone labels a ceremonial grade. Cacao also contains caffeine to varying degrees.
Yeah,
So preferably you don't want to have much of it, but some sorts have a lot of caffeine and you like really like get agitated. So you want to do your research, but we can dive into that later.
yeah.
But yeah, this is just a block of cacao, right? Pure cacao, 100% cacao. So then we go, I've got this Co-op Irresistible Raspberry Fairtrade chocolate, just here.
Okay.
And we've got 57%. So it starts with cacao mass, cocoa mass, which is, yeah, like basically the defatted one, cane
Yeah.
sugar, cocoa butter, which they then, that's the funny thing about chocolate. So chocolate, basically, they use cocoa powder and then they use cacao butter from a different source often. So often you find cocoa powder from, I don't know, Brazil, and then they add cacao butter from Africa. It's a bit, you know, food industry. So, and then it says cocoa solids 57% minimum. All right, so that's not too bad. It's quite a dark chocolate, isn't it?
Uh-huh.
But again, it's cocoa. So, and then with some added
So
cacao
that
butter,
would
which
be
also has been
so that
processed.
would be the butter. The
And you find chocolate that has like 80%, right? Or like 90%. But even that is been industrially processed. So as soon as it comes in the bar, usually you've got a lot of machines that were working on the cacao along the way. And that's the next step, is like, how much has it been processed and how much energy has then been going away. And you know how it is with honey, right? How we're supposed to only stir honey in a tea when it's almost a bit cooled down to, get all the benefits out of it. It's the same with cacao. You don't want to heat it too much. You don't want to process it too much.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I want to get into kind of how to prep your cacao and what's the best kind of, yeah, what's the best process to actually consume it. But just, I guess, there's a few more questions I feel I've got on the kind of dispelling some myths and stuff. What white chocolate? How does that even play into this, or is that just a marketing term, white chocolate, and it's something completely different?
White chocolate, you mean?
Yes.
All right.
Is that even chocolate? Could you class that? Because chocolate's just a brand name, right?
It's a good question, honestly. So, I mean, chocolate in differentiation to pure cacao is literally just parts of cacao combined with sugar and flavors. That's what
Yeah.
makes chocolate chocolate. Is a combination of the actual plant with other herbs, with other spices, or in our Western culture, mainly sugar. And so white chocolate has parts of cacao, but it's only the cacao butter that it has. So it doesn't have the cocoa powder. Because if you think of um, cocoa powder is dark, right? But the cacao butter, which is literally fat, if you take it away, it's very light, very pale.
Mm.
I have some downstairs, could just bring that up too. But and hence why, if you just use cacao butter without the cocoa powder, which would make it brown, the chocolate, right?
Hmm.
If you don't have that, it just stays white. So basically, white chocolate has a little bit of that cacao-ish flavor through the cacao butter, but it has so much sugar on top of it that yeah, it's more of like it has more sugar than usually chocolate has, like the dark chocolate has.
Yeah.
Does
And
that make sense? So that basically, yeah, white chocolate is cacao butter with sugar.
yes, yeah, it does make sense. You don't get that color essentially. Okay, yeah, so there definitely could be some chocolate in there. What's the things to look out for on like bars of chocolate, which is just a no in the shops? You know,
Oh
if
my
it
god,
for
you
me,
said
if it's got
it.
milk in, I'm like, yeah, no, because it's just another dilution of the actual chocolate.
Yeah, well, I'm not a chocolate teacher, right? I'm a cacao teacher, so maybe you're asking that to the wrong person. But yeah, I mean, I hardly get, eat chocolate just for enjoyment, maybe sometimes. But I would look for the first ingredients, because the first ingredients are the highest. So as soon as it says sugar as first ingredient, I'm like, yeah, why am I even bothering?
Yeah.
But that's because I used to love that. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I was a huge fan of chocolates, but I just got so used to the pure taste of cacao that if I eat it too sweet and sugary chocolate, I just don't enjoy it anymore.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
if someone wants a piece of chocolate, go get a piece of chocolate. But if you want to have the nutrients of cacao, then
Yeah.
I say let's dive into the differences of cacao that are out there on the market, right?
Yeah, if you're looking for something with health benefits,
Yeah.
then you're going to have to go for the cacao because there isn't anything similar.
Treat the chocolate as a treat and a sweet, right? And a candy.
Mhm.
Wonderful. And get your cacao as the actual
Mhm.
healthy
Is
benefit.
it obviously sugar's highly addictive, and people think I'm addicted to chocolate when you're actually addicted to the sugar. Now, is cacao, does that, it has obviously neurological effects which can cause some attachment to that of that, pleasure seeking animal. But
You know
it,
what? It's the opposite. It actually
okay.
helps you get rid of addictions, and that's one of the work I love most, right? So if you
Okay.
dive into it, yes, sugar is the thing that's highly addictive. So you want to avoid that. Also, you want to avoid that in your cup of cacao. If you are not used to the bitter taste, take some honey. But yes, like you said, don't mix it with milk. And that's not because I'm vegan. That's literally because the milk blocks the metabolization of the nutrients. So, and also because cacao contains so much cacao butter, it's anyway creamy, even if you just make it with water. Compared to, have you had a cocoa powder with water? Oh, it's kind of like, ugh.
Yeah.
That obviously doesn't work, but in actually pure cacao, it's so creamy. So you don't need that. But yeah, you won't want to mix it with milk for sure, and not really with sugar either, unless you're really used to sugar and just want to gradually get rid of it. That's fine too. There's no judgment. But coffee is addictive as well. So if you have that as a comparison, because we notice when we drink a lot of coffee and then suddenly we stop drinking it, we get headaches. So we have literally withdrawing symptoms. Same with sugar, we get tired or whatever. With cacao, you don't have it. It's the opposite, funny enough. So you, over time, you'll notice. So first, it took me a long while to really feel the full energetic effect of cacao, right? That like love feeling, the bliss feelings, all these like neurological things that we love. But as soon as I felt it, I didn't need as much anymore. So
Mm-hmm.
first, I started drinking and I thought I'd need it more and more because I don't feel anything. But actually, cacao was asking me to just sit back and listen to my body. And that's something in our culture we rarely do anymore. So we don't even, like, I didn't even know where to start. And what does this mean, listening to my body? Where's my intuition? I have no idea. What is even happening? Like, just, tune in, feel into the shifts in your body. And I was like, yeah, which shifts? So until I got into that practice of listening on and feeling myself really, and that's when the cacao really brought me the messages, and from that moment on I needed less and less and less cacao. And so now it's simply the smell. So if I open a bar of cacao, I'm like kind of that high, because our body, um well, we are conditioned beings, right? So our body saves those memories. It knows what it has experienced again and again and again. So now the cacao is in us. The cacao has activated us. So cacao doesn't bring anything foreign to us. It only contains neurotransmitters and compounds that are in our bodies as well. So
Mm-hmm.
it docks onto receptors, and it reminds our bodies of what we are capable. So once our body has remembered that it's capable of that love, that it's capable of that trust, that it's capable of that creativity, that it's capable of the focus, whatever you use it for, you need less and less. And it's a very common thing you see in people that use cacao over the years, that now they don't drink a big ceremonial dose anymore. They just drink a few grams, and that's enough. And some even stop drinking it altogether and just have it every now and then and snack a bean to activate. And you also will see that there's no side effects if you stop having it. So I consciously take breaks because I love drinking my cacao. It's a great thing, it's not a problem. You can drink it daily, whatever. Um, but also just to get more sensitive with my body, I also stop it sometimes, as there is some detoxing um, that can happen in your body. You want to give your body a break sometimes. And then when I have these like 2 weeks without cacao, I still feel the love. I can still connect with it because it's in me. It's not something the cacao brings it to me to remember, but it is in me. We all have that.
Yeah, it reminds me of something Ramdas once said about once you get the message, hang up the phone. And
Yeah.
he was talking specifically about drugs and psychedelic drugs, and that once you get the message, you don't need to keep doing it. You can just hang up the phone, and it's enough. Yeah, love that. I love all that. That's amazing. What about cacao nibs? Because doing a little bit of research, I was in the impression cacao nibs were this, the pure form, not the raw form, the pure form, but just chopped up. But apparently, is it right that they are like the cases of the bean as well, like the skin,
The peel.
the
Yeah.
peel? Is that
There's
always the case?
It's not, there's never and always, because there's so many different brands out there. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many different ways, and it, because cacao is industrialized, there's also different places do it differently. Some just use the rest leftovers, from whatever production they have. Some have the peels with them, where it's a thing. Some people say it's good to have the peels, others don't, because in the end, the peel of the cacao bean is a protection mechanism against nature. So in the end, you don't necessarily want to intake it too much. But you get from like ceremonial cacao brands that actually, really source their cacao consciously, work with the spirit of cacao, process it locally, have, you know, people and locals there peeling the beans. Like, it's usually women traditionally that do it, and even from home, and they do it while the kids playing around, and they would sort out the really nice beans because they start crumbling often. Yeah. And those that are still they're still, intact, they would put aside, and the rest they would just use and process into the paste, which then gets cooled down into a block. And then they sell cacao beans, and you can just crunch them up as nibs. And then I've got the pure bean. So I'd rather recommend you getting cacao beans and then just crunch them up for nibs, and then you know what you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think before we get into kind of making process, could be, you just touched on it there. Could we talk a bit about the sustainability factor and what to kind of look out for? I think that'll be really helpful.
Yeah. So you want to look out for farms, that are actually, or rainforest cacao growing trees, versus then plantations is the name, right?
Yeah.
Industrialized processes, and planted trees, because you'll then end up with different species of cacao and less energy. So also you want to know, is the money going back into the culture? Because I think we have, a lot of distortion here, in this world of just exploiting. And that's something that happened through chocolate. So when cacao came to Europe, it was not really favored in the pure taste and the way the Mayans and Aztecs, for example, would drank it. So they would start adding sugar and milk, and then it got like into chocolate, and that's how we ended up with that. But chocolate became so popular, and then we had slavery involved, and we had a lot of exploitation. So that's the kind of dark shadow side of cacao, which obviously it's not cacao's fault, but it's us. So I think if we really want to get back now to the origins and want to be aware of our, oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. A lot going on. What happened there?
You know what? This starts happening recently. As soon as someone calls me, my Spotify starts playing.
Oh, really?
I have no idea why.
You got to have a look at your settings.
I hope you can edit that.
Oh, we're pretty chilled on the podcast, don't we? That's funny. It's Cacao's calling.
Cacao's calling, yes. It's Lorena McKennett, green leaves. Like the green leaves, all right, we're talking about the green leaves of cacao. So yeah, we want green sustainability, right? It's all we want to go back to green. So be aware of the resources, of the source of it. Be aware. And that, I think that goes, with everything, coffee, food, whatever, where are you getting your stuff from, really? And so if you're interested in that, then dig in and do your research. And you can always, like, especially ceremonial cacao companies, they're still small. You can message them, you can ask them, hey, where's your cacao from? How is it processed? Where does the money go? And I wouldn't necessarily look out for Fairtrade, because Fairtrade is a certificate that small farmers have to get. It's too expensive for them. So I'd rather look out for direct trade versus Fairtrade, right? Direct trade means the workers get direct money. The money goes directly to workers, not only the farmer that then distributes it, often unfairly as well, to the workers. It's more direct to each worker. So that's one thing to look out for. Is it one specific plantation they get the cacao from, or is it actually wild grown? It's becoming popular. So only because it's sourced from a native culture or a tribe doesn't necessarily mean it's the highest ceremonial energy, because even back, in those countries, they are quite poor, so they are looking for ways to make money. So even they fall into marketing schemes. Even they would praise something as original or whatever, to get the product. And there's a lot of white labeling out there, so a lot of cacao is often from similar sources, which means there's a bigger production. There's a lot of things to pay attention to if you really want to go down that rabbit hole. But I think the best way is always just messaging and asking, hey, where do you get it from? How is it sourced? And then you have your answer, right?
Yeah. Well, how did you go about sourcing your cacao?
So my cacao comes mainly from, so I try different brands. So I love trying out different cacao, because cacao is grown in many different regions. I wouldn't go so far to have cacao from Africa yet. I think there's still, there's a lot of child labor still involved,
Yeah.
still a lot of industrial. There's no really ceremonial attitude, which might change in the future. Just for as of now, you look out for the most common places are Guatemala, Peru, and Ecuador. Colombia is catching up as well, I think. So I source my cacao mainly from Guatemala, but I do look around and try out different cacaos because there's so many varieties, but also a lot of differences. So you want to find one that you like the taste and the effect, but that takes a bit of feeling into yourself, really, because there's some brands I really don't like. They're
Mm-hmm.
too sour. I feel the fermentation process gone off a bit.
Yeah.
Others have too much caffeine for me. Then the next one, is just nothing. Like, it might be good for my body, but I just don't feel anything really in terms of heart opening or joy. So yeah, it's the one that I just drink is Keys Cacao from Guatemala, and that's definitely my favorite. But for now, we'll see what happens in the future. But Keys is the guy, just for reference, for people that don't know. He's that American white dude in the 70s, like proper hippie guy that went like a few decades ago to San Marcos La Laguna in Lake Atitlan in Guatemala, and he got visited by the cacao spirit, and he's the reason why we have that trend now, because cacao has been used for centuries in those cultures, but it's almost forgotten. And almost even the Mayan cultures nowadays, they were kind of like, yeah, not really interested in anymore. They're interested in being Western, and don't really follow their own traditions. So he's came in and explored that whole cacao thing, and actually dived into the research of chocolate, and it became a thing. He started hosting cacao ceremonies, and also that term was literally just invented because in San Marcos it was a trendy word. So this whole myth about a cacao ceremony doesn't exist. Cacao has been used over the history, right? For weddings, for birth rites, for initiation rituals, for for fire ceremonies, and all sorts of things has been combined with other psychedelic plants and such. But there's not such a thing, at least that it's to the degree that it's known, because obviously because of colonialization, there's a lot of knowledge lost. But as we know, there's no such thing as a cacao ceremony, but like an ayahuasca ceremony. That's not a thing. So he literally just shared cacao and did his energy work, and that became a cacao ceremony. And now there's Mayans through that, and that's the beautiful thing, talking about giving back, right? So he brought the awareness into Western culture because it's a spiritual hippie kind of town where he is. Travelers came, got wind of that, or heard about that cacao thing, started their own brands, and they honestly, most of it dates back to his porch, really, and his teachings on cacao. And then the Mayan culture, their locals picked up on it and was like, wow, it's really trendy. Actually, we can make money. This is planned from our land. How about we just serve it? And so they then started diving into their history and their culture and started doing fire ceremonies with cacao again. And so now it's coming to kind of like full circle where also they can take that back and reclaim that back. But funny enough, it started with this white American hippie dude.
Wow, fascinating. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful lesson, I think, for me and for a lot of us, because we have often are very strict. We talk about cultural appropriation and all that stuff, but just to know there's not a dogma, there's not this one right way, there's not this is how you do it, and if you're not a native from Guatemala, you have no right to share cacao. Like, it's bullshit, right? Cacao knows no boundaries. She wants to be shared, and yes, there's ways in which you can honor it and ways in which you can do it more consciously and aware. But in the end of the day, she wants to get out there and open people's hearts.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think you can apply that to many things. I mean, traveling in Southeast Asia, and we lived, I mean, pretty much on the same kind of daily agenda as these monks whilst teaching in a school. And all they wanted to do was go on their laptops and watch music videos. And we were almost like coming from the West and knowing there's a richer, there's a deeper as a deeper essence of us humans, and what really, what really is sustainable for us, and our children, etc. And we were like almost teaching them what they already knew. They just got caught in this, I guess, a trend or some kind of stimulated stimulated technology that takes you because you're, because it feeds on our desires, but really, yeah, it can be taught. We often sometimes feel a bit like, who are we to teach? Who are we in the West to teach like the Eastern traditions, or South American traditions, like their own ways? But like often you go to these cultures and westernized village and stuff is already happening, and it's like we have experienced the effects of that. So it's so important to even go back and talk to people about it.
But also, you don't have to go that far. See, right? We often forget. We reach out to like India or places like South America for plant medicines or India for philosophies, but we forget that we in the Western world have that as well. And so we don't need to go out and teach something like yoga, for example. I mean, you can, but you have your own culture. Like in the UK, the Celtic origin, right, so strong. Then the Germanic, the culture of the Germanic tribes, the runes, the ancient spirituality that is there too. And we forget that we have the pagans, right? They have philosophies, they have stories to share. That basically, we have those philosophies all over the world, just dressed up in different colors. Like I'm very interested in mending the fairy accord, which is bringing the harmony again between like nature, the natural world, and human beings. And this is funny enough. This is something I find in all traditions, just dressed up in different ways. In a different tradition, it's dressed up in like finding the balance between the masculine and the feminine, bringing that together. Or in another, it's like cacao is actually that also. There's this ancient legend of when the world is threatened by that loss of connection between human beings and nature. Cacao comes from the rainforest to bring back harmony, to bring back balance, and she does that by reminding us that we are nature, we are part of this, and we're not separated. We are a creature of this planet, and I find that as a teaching in so many teachings all over the world, just dressed in different words, in a different story, in different ways of describing it. But when it comes down to the same thing. And we have that too, so we don't need even to go that far. And I think
Yeah,
the
I
beauty of
think.
cacao, she reminds us of that. I think, like, yes, this is a medicine from a different country, from far away. But then again, we are so connected to it through chocolate, through the past hundred of years, that we kind of know the plant in a way. So we have that connection already. Just now we're deepening it and opening up to the actual plant rather than the distortion of it. And she comes in, and she's often not the main thing. If you look out, you find cacao and ecstatic dance, cacao and yoga, cacao. It's cacao and it's not necessarily, and that's how it's been in the cultures in South America and Middle America as well. So she's often that vessel, that vehicle that reminds you of what is your passion, what do you have to bring to the world, and then she assists you with it, she facilitates it with you. But it's rare to find a cacao ceremony where someone gives you cacao like in an ayahuasca ceremony and just lets you be and sink in. That's something I love doing, but then also I have my own passions that she helps me activating and bring out to the world. So that's the beauty of her, really, is to find what is true to us.
Yeah, for sure. What are your ceremonies like? Because I hear a lot about cacao ceremonies. They are themselves just all about the drink. So what are your ceremonies like? How do you prep for them? And
So since it became a trend, it's rarely often only about the drink anymore. It's often like, it's been almost, you just have your offerings, you have your retreats, sound journeys, yoga stuff, and then people just serve cacao because it's almost been demanded because everyone now knows about cacao.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily, and then they call it a cacao ceremony, but I would just say that's a cacao ritual at the beginning, and then they go into their own magic of like sound or
Mm.
yeah, movement, somatic practices, which is beautiful because cacao is a wonderful support in all these practices. So there's no right or wrong. There's not a set ceremony. So it's, if you know, no cacao ceremony is the same. It really depends on the person facilitating it, really. So my ceremonies are um, so there's either I have several versions. One there is either very much focused on cacao, where it's going deep inward, often through a guided meditation or even just silence. I don't work that much with music, so I because it helped me to just go silent and instead of being in the brain and stimulated all the time, really coming inside and listen to the body, and then realizing what messages are coming through you, but also through cacao. And then I have the ceremonies that are more, yeah, we drink cacao. I invite her in. I talk about cacao just so people also are aware what they're drinking and consuming. And then I go into either a shamanic drum journey, a meditation, or storytelling. That's something I like doing to activate a certain part of the brain that, you know, through stories, we do understand a deeper meaning. And then I go into a sharing circle. So that's something particularly here and in our world and also in the UK, where I notice that people don't really talk about their emotions, and cacao is very much opening us up to our emotions, and that's also part of the chemical compounds in her. You know, the phenylethylamine and the anandamide, for example. So we get to experience that kind of heart opening, softening. We feel we are more courageous to be vulnerable, and by talking about that, we actually get to we get to integrate lessons, because nowadays we get lessons through memes and quotes all the time on Instagram and social media. We are basically bombarded with philosophies and teachings, but who does really practice what they preach, right? Who actually integrates that? Who actually does this? Because I think that's where what it comes down to in the end of the
Hmm.
day, that in our day-to-day life we are living with an open heart. We are living in our truth, not just in ceremonies. So I try to have my ceremonies as a portal of like discovering what is important to us and what our values are, and then bridging into the day-to-day. How can we live that every day instead of just in ceremonies? Because we have a lot of people that just hop from ceremony to ceremony because that's where they have the beautiful experiences. That's where they feel really themselves. But I want to empower people to feel like that, like every day,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm not sure they're hopping. I think they're dragging themselves from ceremony to ceremony. The hopping happens at the ceremony, but the dragging themselves.
And that's totally fine, you know. But I think, you know, at some point, everyone realizes they need to integrate.
Yeah, for sure. And it's right. Like, who does practice what they preach? There's a beautiful quote, not beautiful, actually. It's pretty terrible, but it's like, show me, tell me what you do, and I might not believe you, but show me your bank account and I will know what you do and what you value. And it's
Mhm.
like, we spend our money in ways in which things we actually value. And it's
Yeah.
just an interesting insight to actually, what are you actually practicing?
Mhm.
And it's rare. I mean, even myself, catch myself many times. You're actually teaching me quite a lot, and I'm really enjoying the podcast, because it's true. In when you speak from that heartfelt, connected place, it's really powerful, because you're right. Not many people are open, and when people say they are, no, sometimes they're just saying what they've heard sounds good, or what they are they actually feeling. Only they'll know. Only they'll ever know. You might feel that someone's not being genuine, authentic, but only the person can ever know.
And
And
yes, and it's about authenticity and being honest with yourself, right?
mhm,
But not everyone has that value, so also we can't really chat about that. So for me, that's very important.
mhm.
That it's not for everyone, I guess.
Yeah,
I think we can change
absolutely.
the world if we are more honest with ourselves and actually hold ourselves accountable
Mhm.
for what we talk that, sounds nice. And yeah, it's a big thing, especially in that kind of industry as well, of there's certain terms that people use and that just sound nice. Like when I in my courses, there's one part where I teach my participants to really be conscious about using their language. So when they send someone love and light or blessings, sister, to really think about, do you mean what you're saying there? Is this a genuine, like, is this really like a soul sister of yours? Like you spent 10 years with that person, you love her that much, and you want to send her blessings from your heart. That's rarely the case, is it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I get like, love, XX, kiss, kiss, love you so much, boo. And I'm like, you don't even know me. Do you really mean this? Or is this just because it's not? And that comes down to that kind of authenticity. Words are spells, and it's beautiful to send something nice, right?
Yeah, but we're frivolous with words. It's just, yeah, it's cultural. It's definitely cultural as well. We feel like we have to say these things, but then it devalues it when we really do mean it. So yeah, let's talk about the kind of the making process. How many, back to kind of technical stuff, but how many grams do you have per cup? Love the fact, going back to what you said at the start, that you kind of you find most people who really been doing it for a long time do ease off and just very much more subtle. But I'd say it's someone who's just getting into this for the first time. How would they go about?
So depending on how you would drink it for the first time, like would you just prepare it for yourself or like a work day, or a creative project, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
instead of coffee, for example, maybe you want to get rid of your daily coffee habit and want to implement something more healthy. Let's start with that, right? Then I would recommend you drink like 20 or to 28, like 20 to 30 grams, something along those lines. Um, to Just with water, if you wanna have it a bit different and you want to add some coconut milk or oat milk, you can do that. I would start with half water, half of that other milk. But always recommend, if you try it for the first time, try it pure, just because. And then have some honey next to you to stir in if you want. Obviously, don't force it down if it's too bitter, but just to be like aware, every now and then have a sip of it pure, just to be like, oh yeah, that's a pure plant. Oh, cool. How does that taste? You know, instead of dipping the potato into mayonnaise all the time, it's like, how does the actual potato taste? Before I use something else to, you know, cover the flavor up, just as an experiment. But yeah, like 20 to 30 grams for like the beginning, for a daily dose, perfect. If you feel like you want to also, apart from the energetics of the day to day and, you know, the work focus, the creativity, the even enhancement of physical performance, if you want to experience more something of a spiritual effect or that also heart opening, um, then I would recommend you to set some time aside, because just because you add more grams to your cup doesn't necessarily mean, like I said before, that you feel it more. So the best thing to do is really set an hour aside or two, or join a ceremony in your surrounding, find an online ceremony, or just even put a YouTube meditation on. You know, just takes time apart, because otherwise you're using a lot of cacao, which is great, still gonna help you in your day to day, but you might not get to experience what you actually want. So if you want to have a message from your body, if you want to have a message from your soul or whatever, make time to receive that message. And then take about, so an official ceremonial dose would be 42 grams. But I would recommend taking at least an hour, if not two or three, aside, and do that with a friend. You struggle to do that on your own, right? Do that with a friend and have fun. And it's not like you have to be silent all the time. You can chat together, but remind yourself after every 20-30 minutes, hey, how do you feel now? Do you feel different? Oh, what do you want to do? Do you want to dance a bit? Do you want to move your body? Oh, no, actually, I just want to sit in stillness and explore. Who knows? Do you feel like tingly sensation? Do you feel your heartbeat racing? Oh, suddenly I have so many good ideas. I need to write them all down. Whatever is going to come up, because, yeah, what I said, if we ask our bodies for a message, or even if we ask a plant for a message, like with ayahuasca, we sit a whole night, don't we? And to wait and to explore and treat that as a plant medicine. At least if you're going for like 42 grams, if you go like for 20 grams, don't worry, you don't have to treat it as a plant medicine all the time. Cacao is so
Mm-hmm.
subtle. cacao is wonderful in day to day. But yeah, if you want to treat it as a plant medicine, then take the time aside. Set your intention, even maybe there's something in particular you want to explore, and be curious. So stay curious, because if you don't take the time, or if you're not aware what happens, and that happened to me, I say this out of my own experience, right? At the beginning, because I thought I need more, I need to drink more, and a second cup even, because I'm so desensitized. I don't notice stuff. Like, I didn't even notice coffee. That's how numb I was, right? So I thought I'd drink more and more, and then I got diarrhea. Yay! Nauseous feeling is quite a common thing. It's very much your body basically pooping all that unnecessary things out that you actually didn't need. And that's your body telling you, you better sit down and listen inward other than drinking another cup, because that's what we do in our society. Drink more and more and more, instead of, hey, I've had enough. Now I make time to receive. We want the immediate effects, right? We want to have stimulations constantly. But actually what cacao is so subtle. It's really profound if you actually listen, but it's subtle. So you need to make that space, and that space to sink into that and to receive. So ask for that, and don't be shied away by little things like that. Just use those as signs. Nausea, all right. Is there something you can't digest? Headaches, are you staying in your head? Are you being too much in your head? Don't you really go down? Or is there resistance for like new information coming in? Also, nausea can be, is there, or headaches too, both. Is there something you are suppressing? Are you keeping the emotions that want to come up stuck? Because often that's the first message that people get, is emotions coming up. So that's, I'm touching on upon like that addictions again. Addiction has, it's not necessarily the fault of a substance. It's a trauma, and it's something in us. What are we numbing down? Why are we having another piece of chocolate? Why sugar, right? Why do I need a cigarette right now? Is it because I feel lonely? Why do I have that glass of wine in the evening? Is it because I don't feel love? Or is it because I feel bored with my life? Or because I'm frustrated? So there's a reason, and there's often trauma or fear underneath. And that's the beauty of cacao, is she can connect us to those emotions in a very subtle way. She doesn't reactivate any trauma, so it's safe. And you can go wherever you want to go. So she just opens doors, but she doesn't push you through them. That's something that Keys used to say a lot. You are not forced to go through. It's not like you drink ayahuasca and boom, no choice, you're in it. Or even alcohol, right? If you're tipsy, you're tipsy. There's no way back.
Mm-hmm.
With cacao, you always are in control how deep you want to go. Yeah, you see, I'm just stopping now because I feel like I can just go
No,
on.
you go. I'm letting you go. How's your cacao going down?
Ah, love it. Maybe that's also, I'm going in this flow. Like, oh, boom, 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 cacao, cacao, cacao. So I drink my cacao. This is just like Guatemalan cacao. I've prepared it. Yeah, we're talking about preparation, don't we? So I have, like, that must have been, I don't measure my cacao anymore, because I got so used to intuitively. I mean, I know when I have a bit of cacao, I know roughly how much it is. And also I ask my body. That's another thing to say. No matter how much cacao you have in your cup, always tune in to your system, right? If you feel like you need to go to the toilet, that might be a sign of your body saying you've had enough. Just save the rest of the cup for later, or give it back to the earth, or let it cool down. If you prepared it in like a blender, or you were whisking it a lot and it's very foamy, if it cools down, it hardens and it gets moussey. So you might even want to put it in the fridge and then spoon it with bananas on the next morning. So don't force yourself to drink. If you feel your body says, hey, in any form or way says, I've had enough, then you've had enough. That's wonderful. And that can sometimes be the taste changes. So at the beginning, you're like, oh, it's delicious. Oh, I made such a nice drink. And then after like 3-4 sips, you noticed, oh, it's getting a bit sour, or oh, it's getting too sweet. That might be your body saying enough. So yeah, also just tap into that, right? And so this one I prepared with water, and it was must have been 15-20 grams, I think. what I have here, but I haven't even finished it. And I'm also not going to drink more now because I do feel quite like ooh and giggly and fun, and I think
Mhm.
that's enough for now. After the podcast, I'm probably going to take my time to then just enjoy that feeling and that high. Um, but yeah, so this is water and cacao. I just put a little bit of vanilla in and a drop of rose oil. That's all.
Mhm.
I don't sweeten my cacao anymore unless I create recipes. I love creating different recipes, and you can use, herbal teas and use that as the liquid for cacao. You can, cinnamon is a popular one. Very traditional is cayenne pepper as well, especially if you want to absorb it quite quickly in your system. It helps to get into your bloodstream. But any added like nut milk or honey sugar stuff is going to slow down the absorption. So there's no really need for you to put a lot of oat milk in and then put a lot of cayenne in. Like rather, decide for one thing or the other. Just because you put oat milk in doesn't mean it takes away the effects. It just prolongs them and it's more soft and prolongs them. Versus if you have them pure, it comes into your body way quicker. So that's something to be aware of. And then yeah, experiment, I'd say. So in terms of preparation, you want to, there's several ways of going about this. Obviously, traditionally, there was no electricity, there was no blenders, there was no things. So they would pour it from one cup into the other to create foam. So foam is a very much traditional thing in cacao. We used to say cacao for the body and foam for the soul. And also as the Mayans, they really appreciate and honor the elements. So the bubbles, the foamy bubbles, is the element of air. So we've got all the elements in cacao. I'm not boring you, Chris. You need a cup of cacao.
Think I do.
Need to wake up.
No, I'm thoroughly in this. Tried to hide that yawn.
But yeah, no, don't worry. So if you're talking about elements, we have the cacao, the earth, we have the
You're not
sun.
letting me get away with anything,
No,
are
no,
you?
no.
I love it.
Sorry, that's also my authentic self. I'm just a bit of a choker. Because that's interesting for people, isn't it? We don't have to be all like, oh, I'm the cacao priestess, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's enjoy this love. Like, no, I'm a human being and I'm a person. I have my own quirks. Um, we all
Yeah,
have.
let them out, honestly. It's so much better. So much healthier than like feeling like, oh, he's falling asleep
Yeah,
and I'm
yes,
just
exactly.
rabbiting on. No, it's
Um,
hilarious.
well, so, all right, let's wrap it up then.
No, it's
Cacao.
good. I think it's a lot to chew on, and it's just good. It's all useful information. Honestly, I'll be going back to listen to the podcast again when I'm awake. No, truly, honestly, you're dosing out the good information here.
Yeah, try to.
And where can one find you online? And how often are your workshops? Are you doing any workshops? You do in person stuff as well? So maybe give people a kind of direction where to find
Yeah,
you.
of course. So you find me mainly on Instagram and Facebook at the moment on Cacao Zauber, which is KAKAOZAUBER, or you
Mhm.
Google my name, Laura Durban. I think that might be easy as well, Laura Durban. And I do live in Glastonbury in Somerset, so that's where I hold in person events as well. But at the moment, it's also mainly online. I do have quite a big German following as well, so if you speak another language, I might cover that maybe. And yeah, English ceremonies and courses. So I love teaching about cacao, as you can. I love talking about cacao, as you can see,
Mhm.
and I love bringing people into their authentic connection. So that's something that is really my heart, and bringing people together. So I'm hoping to host talking circles soon, um, fueled by cacao, and where we can actually speak about our emotions and dive into our blind spots. You know what? And I was very inspired by your podcast with Jeff Sharp,
Mhm.
Urban Barefoot,
Yeah.
because that was this one thing he said of like, yes, if we would just be transparent, right? If we would just talk about our shadows, even admit, yes, I'm doing this to be more seen, or be more liked. Admit that, and that's something that I hold very dear to my heart as well. And it's something in our culture, unfortunately, isn't really done so much, especially in the UK, if I may say that so honestly. But
Oh, it's so
like,
true.
you don't hear, like in Germany, if someone says yes, they mean yes, and if someone says no, they mean no. Here you don't know. Like, yes, of course, let's have a coffee together soon. Like, do they really want to have a coffee? No,
Yeah.
but maybe. Yeah, think about it. It's always a no. Okay, got that.
Yeah. Oh, I think we just get offended so easily. That's a part of it as well. People
Yeah.
just don't want to offend someone else.
But it's insecurity, right? It's
Yeah.
insecurity. We've been suppressed, and emotions have been suppressed. We feel wrong. We feel like we can't do that, and also the whole thing about the love and light thing. Now the problem is with all this, and that's why I love Cacao, because she brings us giggles, but she can also bring us the deep emotions. Because what we have also in the yoga community and all these communities is like, keep your vibration high. Yes, I get that one. But we can't keep our vibration high if underneath in our subconscious there's so much mud and murky water stored. So you can pretend on the surface you're high vibration, but deep down you're actually not. You're fucking whiny, crying, sad child that doesn't want to keep the vibration high. That just wants to cry or be angry or whatever. And we have to
Mhm.
learn to make space for that in our day to day, because
Yeah.
often we make such a big deal out of someone being upset, and we don't want to upset people, so we don't tell the truth, because oh no, then I upset them and then I'm the bad guy and then I'm upset. Oh, like, no, yes, you might upset someone, that's normal, but you know what, they might still be your friend, or if you are still their friend, you can hold them while being upset. In a relationship, that's a common thing. You say things that upsets the other person, but you can tell them, you know what, I'm sorry, this is my truth, and I know this upsets you, but I'm here for you to go through that upset. Let's see, I just triggered you. What is that trigger? Oh, okay, triggered rejection. You know what, I'm not rejecting you, I'm still here. How can you work on your own rejection then? And vice versa, right? Or you're avoiding love. Why are you pulling away from me? That's okay, I give you space, but how can we dive in? Where does that come from? And making space for that, instead of like your girlfriend crying, oh my gosh, it's a big deal, she's upset, oh fuck, can't deal with this. Or your friend, your best friend being angry, and yeah, be okay with that.
Hmm.
People have all the range of emotions, and we think we value the love and light emotions more, but actually subconsciously we don't, because when we are happy, we want to have more of that. We don't even express gratitude for it. But as soon as we have a sad day, we're like, fuck, I have a sad day, I failed in my life, I did something wrong, oh my gosh, the world is crumbling. And that's giving it more value. Do you understand what I
Hmm.
mean? Instead of just being grateful for every emotion we have, and not,
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Yeah.
otherwise it's going to be a big deal in the
Yeah.
long
It's easy to I often say it's easy to be happy when things are going good. And it's
run.
just a reminder that it'll pass. And then the sadness will come at some point. The kind of you're slipping into that unhappiness, something's not going quite right. And just be happy in that. And if you're happy in that, then you're gonna have a good life. But it's like it I think I get definitely lost within like, okay, if I'm happy now in the uncomfortable or the things that aren't going so well, then my motivation is going to go away to actually get out of that. But
Mm.
it doesn't work like that. You can just endure because it will just pass. Everything changes and it will just pass anyway. And it's just the motions of life that you
You know
just need.
what? Sorry, but
Yeah, yeah.
before I forget, because that was a good cue there, because you're right. The other extreme of that end is the victim mentality, right? If you
Hmm.
get stuck in that story, and like we go deeper, and there's more to work on, there's more to work on. So we don't want to fall into that spectrum. But if we're aware of that, we can
Yeah.
get it. Just, this too shall pass, right? This too shall pass.
It's too short for us. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to ask you how the cold water's going. But just to go back to what you were saying about the space that's created, like, oh my God, that it cuts so deep because I'm actually doing some coaching with Jeff. After our podcast, I just reached out to him. I was like, just I'm with you. Like, what do we need to do? And I did like I'm doing like an 8-week program with him, but he's providing a space for me to actually just see what comes up and actually express in that safe space. Like, we do not have
Yeah.
spaces which you touched on, spaces in our culture, especially in England and UK, like where we can just go and feel it all, feel everything. Like, can you do that in a yoga studio? No. Have I cried in a yoga studio? Yes. Was I the only one? Yes. Like, it didn't feel okay, and nothing, it just happened. There was no real emphasis on like, it's okay and we're all here together. That's why circles are so good, because everyone faces each other, and it's actually like, who do we need to hold? Who do we need to actually navigate through? So it's powerful, but we do all need to wake up to that, don't we? To create these spaces and just go to these spaces more than anything, to dive into these emotions that are just there and just, being ignored.
And that's a beautiful thing. This is exactly why I stick with doing cacao ceremonies. That's literally that. And you can, maybe there's one thing you might, if you are a person that listens like this and like, oh, I want to have a space like this, try a cacao ceremony, for example, but listen for key phrases that are being shared right at the beginning. If someone says things like, oh, that's something I teach a lot, it's like, everything is allowed, every emotion, no matter if you're giggling or if you're crying. If that is expressed, you can be safe, right? Because, and that might be even in cacao and ecstatic dance. Someone might say that at the beginning, hey, you can have fun and just joy and dance around, but also, hey, if you feel like that movement actually, goes into like somatic practice and you need to express your inner demons or whatever, right? Do that, then great. Because as soon as you feel like, oh, I have to be cheerful and dancey all the time, or oh my gosh, they're all sobbing and crying in that circle and I am not allowed to be giggly, then obviously you don't feel safe. So watch out for those kind of key phrases of is this really okay? And find your spaces in which you can be all. I think that's a very important part. And that's the beauty. Again, coming back to cacao, is really she brings us all the spectrum, whatever we need to express, to live.
Nice, great. I think we'll finish it there, and then we can talk off air about the cold water course.
Which is also staying in, comfortable in the discomfort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Facing the unknown.
Nice, awesome, Laura. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much.
Is there anything you wanted to finish on, or any sort of anything at all?
You know what? Yeah, don't have judgments for yourself. Like, try to be open and curious. Try to stay open and curious. Don't judge yourself if you're not making the best cacao. Don't judge yourself if you're want to just have it with some work, or don't judge yourself if you don't feel something either. Like, try to come in that space of just exploring, and have as much cacao as you like. There's no need to be afraid of it either. And if you're on the other spectrum that has odd cacao and feels like the connection is lost, then sit down again and ask her what the next chapter is. And Beautiful. If you need any tips on like preparation, I've got like videos and instructions and on Instagram, or my email. Maybe you could include that.
Yeah, I'll include your email. Yeah, anyone wants to reach out to you.
Happy to answer more questions. There's obviously a lot more to share, but yeah, stay in your truth, and that might be compassion.